Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So on trade deadline day, we didn't just have trades go down. We had arguably the biggest pending unrestricted free agent and restricted free agent sign extensions. One as a result of a trade, Mikko Rantanen getting traded to the Dallas Stars and signing an 8-year deal at $12 million. And then fellow Dallas Star Wyatt Johnston signing a 5-year deal at $8.4 million. And although I don't think that it's a perfect comparison, these guys in Dallas, considering there's no state income tax, although that's overrated because they only get taxed in the state that they play in, so it's only half the time. We could talk about that all day when looking at the taxes of the NHL. But yeah, two guys that in some kind of way maybe set the market of what we can kind of expect regarding the pending unrestricted and restricted free agents. So I thought it'd be a fun idea to go through like 20 of these guys. I've been doing this like every 2 months, basically since last summer, of the pending 2025 unrestricted and restricted free agents. So yeah, let's dive into it. There's a bunch of studs. A lot of guys have already signed their extensions, but there's still some sizable guys. And when looking at it, you usually past the trade deadline, you don't see a ton of extensions from games 62 to 82 in the playoffs. It's usually once a team's season's over, they come back to the table. So we're probably not going to see jack shit in terms of deals for the next month or so. So let's predict what this is going to look like once they end up potentially signing. And up first, we're going to be starting it off with Mitch Marner. I'm going to go 8 years, $12.75 million. I know, Mikko Rantanen, $12 million. I know you're screaming, oh, I'd rather have Mikko Rantanen 10 times out of 10. Mitch Marner plays in Toronto, which is higher taxes. Also, Marner is just objectively having a better regular season right now, on pace for like 105 points with 80 points in 63 games. Rantanen did kind of hurt his stock a decent amount when he stunk it up a little bit in Carolina, 6 points in 13 games. Not saying I think that Mikko Rantanen is some kind of fraud, but he did hurt his value a little bit. So yeah, I think Marner at $12.75 million. Previously, when the initial cap jump happened, I expected him to get like 13s. I expect him to re-sign, obviously, with the 8 years. If it's the open market, he could get mid-13s, but I think if it's Toronto, I think Brad Treliving is probably going to draw the line sub $13 million. You're definitely not going ahead of Austin Matthews unless you have some masterclass come playoff time. So I think 8 years, $12.75 million makes sense for both parties. Marner becomes the 4th highest paid player in the NHL next season, I believe, only behind Matthews. Draisaitl, wait, 3rd highest maybe? I don't know, but we're going to move on. Matthew Knies, sticking with the Toronto Maple Leafs. I'm going to go with the 3-year deal at $5.5 million. When looking at Matthew Knies, definitely breaking out this season, 43 points in 60 games. He's fully in the top 6 right now for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Doesn't quite have that track record to demand a serious long-term deal at a decent cap hit. And if I was him, I'd just play it out, bridge myself 2 to 3 years as the cap continues to rise. His role continues to rise. He's only like 22 years old. Then in 2028, Max Domi, OEL, come off the books for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and then cash in at 25, 26 years old on some kind of 8-year deal at $8.5 million if the cap continues to rise. 3 years, 5.5 for Matthew Knies. Brock Nelson, current member of the Colorado Avalanche. I'm going with the 4-year deal at $7 million. Apparently, Lou Lamoriello was offering him a 3-year deal at 7.5. I think some team will kind of give him a Steven Stamkos kind of deal. It doesn't have the same prestige as Stamkos, and Stamkos the prior year when he signed did put up like 40 and 40. A lot of it was on the power play, but I still think someone's going to overpay a decent amount and overterm for Brock Nelson. Still is a very good second-line center right now, but he is 34 years old. This deal will not age well, but someone probably will end up giving him it. Next up, we got Marco Rossi. 2 different deals. 3 years, $6 million, or I think 8 years, $7.5 million makes sense for Marco Rossi. I don't know. Like, there's been trade rumors about this guy for some reason, like the past 2 years. Never made sense, in my opinion. So I think maybe they bridge him, just knowing that, and maybe they bridge him. I'll opt for the 3 years, $6 million, just because if they bridge him, they can make some kind of more so aggressive move and bring in some kind of guy we might be talking about later. But when looking at Marco Rossi, he's definitely well deserving of a pretty hefty bridge, considering he went from having 1 point in 19 games 2 years ago to then 40 points in 82 games last year, and now 52 points in 68 games. So yeah, if he wants an 8-year deal, I don't think he's going to get north of like $8 million because he does benefit a decent amount from playing with Kirill Kaprizov, but a very good player in his own right. I can see a bridge happen for the Minnesota Wild. I think it makes sense for both parties. We're going over to Florida for Sam Bennett's 7-year deal at $8 million. This is really a toss-up whether he hits the open market. It looked like early on he might be getting even more money because he started out the season 13 goals, 13 assists, 26 points in 27 games. Then he did cool down a little bit, but has 20 goals, 21 assists, 41 points in 62 games. Not the best regular season prolific offensive scorer, but if you're a playoff team, you badly want this guy as your second-line center. Considering considering the physicality that he gets. If Elias Lindholm can get 7 years, $7.75 million, some team will pay him that. Somebody will give Sam Bennett a big deal. It'll obviously be a much cheaper deal if it's in Florida, but if he wants to re-sign with the Panthers, but if it's the open market, like I think is decently possible considering they have Lundell locked up for relatively cheap, I think he's going to get a sizable bag. Speaking of which, Aaron Ekblad, I'm going with 6 years at $7.5 million. I think it's even more likely that Ekblad leaves, considering they just brought in Seth Jones. But yeah, with Aaron Ekblad, still going to get paid like a legit top pair guy, considering that's what he's been for the past 2 to 3 years. Hasn't been the same guy since that 2022 season when he had 57 points in 61 games. Then I believe broke his leg. Has not looked like the same guy. Hopefully he didn't get the PED suspension because he's still dealing with that injury. That PED suspension also won't really help his case that much. But yeah, if Brady Shea got a 7x7, somebody's going to give Aaron Ekblad some kind of long-term deal at a sizable cap hit. Your favorite team hopefully should not. This deal would also age pretty bad considering we've already seen Aaron Ekblad not look like the same guy as when he was an elite offensive defenseman, top pair guy. Sticking to offensive defenseman, Evan Bouchard. I'm going to go 8 years, $9 million. This is the classic underlying advanced stats versus the eye test. Eye test will tell you he deserves like a 3-year deal at $6 million. Advanced stats will tell you he deserves the Rasmus Dahlin contract, 8 years, $11 million, something like that. So I'm kind of splitting the difference. 8 years, $9 million. You can hate Bouchard. You can say that he's carried by Matthias Ekholm, but he is without a doubt an extremely talented offensive defenseman. Plays top pair minutes, has both the track record last year in the regular season being about point per game, this year around 70-point pace, and in the playoffs has been very prolific offensively. I don't expect him to get paid less on an 8-year extension than Moritz Seider or Brock Faber. Good players. But Evan Bouchard a year later, or I guess Faber's actually kicks in the same time as Moritz Seider, is going to get more than Evan Bouchard's going to get more than those two. So 8 years, $9 million. And if he can get back to more so the player that he was last year, this would be a damn good deal. I'm not saying he's playing horrible right now, but there has been a bunch of flubs by Evan Bouchard. Going back to an unrestricted free agent, Nikolai Ehlers. I expect him to fully hit the open market. We've heard nothing on an extension, and it was obviously rumored this past summer that he was going to get traded because he didn't want to re-sign. I'm going 7 years, $8.4 million. I think that's even a pretty solid deal. Like the Bennett deal, I'd be a little bit cautious about. The Aaron Ekblad. I think some team's going to get Ehlers pretty cheap considering he's just been a very underrated player the last couple of years. This year has been balling out. He's going to get respect this year. 56 points in 56 games. Last year, only like 61 points, but it's clear that was kind of an outlier year because Rick Bowness didn't pay him a lot. I think he's going to slot on a first line with more ice time, obviously. He's only playing like 16 minutes a night right now and really kill it wherever he goes. He's garnered a reputation as kind of a soft, all-skill guy, but I think when you look at this guy's elite skating, elite play and transition, he can yet again be a point per game player if he has an elite center on a top line. So yeah, I think that this deal might actually be a damn good deal because in the past he's proven that he can drive his own line on Winnipeg. Sticking in Winnipeg with the restricted free agent, Gabe Vilardi. I'm going 5 years, $7.5 million. If they want to do an 8-year deal, it's probably going to be low $8 million considering this guy has 26 goals, 33 assists for 59 points in 67 games. So I think you get him on some term, 4 or 5 year deal at around $7.5 million. He's fully entering his prime at around 25, 26 years old. Has been so good with Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele. Honestly, it might be a little bit lower because just like Cheveldayoff usually gets extensions for relatively cheap. If this guy wants to stay in Winnipeg, yeah, I think it'll be a mid-term deal at around $7-ish million. So yeah, 5 years, $7.5 million. Brock Boeser, I expect him to hit the open market and him to get paid a shit ton. I'm going 7 years, $8 million. The Canucks were only willing to offer him a 5-year deal at $8 million. I think somebody, whether it's the Minnesota Wild potentially, will give him those max term on the unrestricted free agent market, which is 7 years, at $8 million. This year has struggled a decent amount, 18 goals, 20 assists, 38 points in 58 games. But like everybody has struggled on the Vancouver Canucks. Last year had 40 goals, had some down years. I believe that his dad passed away. Rest in peace to his father. So he kind of obviously had other things on his plate, and as a result, his production kind of slowed down. But prior to that, was a consistent 65 to 70 point guy. And I think on a better team that's not in the absolute shitter, he can be a consistent 30 goal, 35 assists, 40 assists kind of guy. And I think that a team that is desperate, the analytics are pretty solid this year relative to like they've stayed about the same compared to last year when he scored 40 goals. So I think Brock Boeser is going to get a sizable bag, and he's one of the guys that I'm pretty confident is going to hit the open market. So he's going to get paid like guys do, like Elias Lindholm and Steven Stamkos got last summer. JJ Peterka, I'm going to go 2 years, $6 million as a restricted free agent. For a second, we thought he was going to the New York Rangers on like Thursday night. There was trade rumors, and there's been some buzz around him in the last couple of years. So I'm going to go with some kind of short-term extension. Maybe he doesn't want to be in Buffalo long-term. Maybe Buffalo just doesn't want to sign him long-term. But give him a 2x6. This would be a really good contract considering he had 28 goals last year and 50 points, as well as 51 points in 61 games this year, playing 18 minutes a night. Yeah, don't think he can demand some kind of 7-year per on a 2-year deal. It's keep him as a restricted free agent and then maybe trade him or, I don't know. Hopefully they can repair their relationship because he's one of the one forwards that have developed within the Buffalo Sabres system. It's weird. It was really weird when you saw trade rumors about JJ Peterka. Going back to Toronto, Tavares, 6 years, $6.25 million. They give him some kind of long-term extension where he can retire a Toronto Maple Leaf. He's definitely a $8 to $9 million player this season, probably low eights, when you consider the fact he has 26 goals, 29 assists, 55 points in 57 games. Last year was kind of a down year when he had 65 points. He's just been, since 2019, 2020, a consistent around 35-ish goal point per game kind of guy. He's aged very, very well for the Toronto Maple Leafs. He's 34 or 35. I think he's 34 years old. So you give him some term. You get the first 2 to 3 years of that at only $6.25 million. Maybe 6x6. We'll call it a 6x6. We'll round down a little bit. You get him at a discount, a $2 to $3 million, a $2-ish million discount the first couple years, and as the salary cap continues to rise, even in those last years, as long as he's a 25 and 25 guy, you're not absolutely losing your mind at $6 million. And I think Tavares will take some kind of cheap deal. I can't see him leave Toronto. His legacy would be so in the dirt. Say that they lose yet again early this season and then he just leaves. God damn, that would be an unfortunate run in Toronto. So I think he's going to stay. He's indicated that he wants to stay, raise his kids in Toronto. And after being overpaid outside of the first year on that deal, he gives back. He gives back and only makes $6 million for 6 years, retires. And similarly to OEL or Tanev, maybe at the end, the final 2 years, he just LTIR retires or something like that. Chris Tanev's not going to be playing all 6 years on that contract. So something similar happens with John Tavares. Next up, one of the more interesting guys, in my opinion, Jakob Chychrun. I'm going to go 7 years, $7.75 million. I don't know if he's going to re-sign in Washington. It seems like on the outside, if you don't know what's going on in Washington, not saying there's any beef, but if you don't know their internal, what they have coming up within the system and currently on the roster, you just pencil him in considering they've been so good this year. He's 26 years old, but there definitely is a strong case to not re-sign him considering he's shooting 13%. He's a career 7% shooter. His underlying numbers aren't that good. On top of the fact that they have Sandin locked up for relatively cheap, $4.6 million the next 3 or 4 seasons. Martin Ferravari on that left side as well as Sandin, who's cheap next year as well, and you could lock him up on some kind of cheap deal. A good third pair, very good second pair, but he's probably going to slide to the third pair once Cole Hudson comes in at the NHL level. So when looking at that left side, I think that they'll probably re-sign Chychrun, but I wouldn't be shocked one bit if they let him at the open market, considering they have Sandin, 24 years old, Ferravari, 25 years old, and Hudson looks so good. I'm sure when they traded for Chychrun, they didn't assume that Hudson would be this good, that they were expecting to kind of re-sign Chychrun. But I could see the argument. Not saying Hudson's going to be NHL ready next year, of course. I think that he needs another year in college or maybe in the AHL. But do you lock up Chychrun and then have to play Chychrun on the right side or move Ferravari or Sandin to the right side? I don't know. It's a good problem to have. Again, with Washington, it's a very good problem to have. But I could easily see him at the open market, and if he does, he's going to get around the Philip Pronik deal, 7 years, or I forget if his was 8 years, 7.25, another year on the cap. Chychrun's basically exactly that. Been very good for them, but if he ends up walking, you don't really you say thank you for that year. We only gave up a 3rd-round pick and Nick Jensen for you. So that's one that I might have to do a deep dive on TikTok or something like that, because I think it's very interesting whether or not they re-sign him. I looked it up before this video. There's no buzz. Apparently his agent a month ago started negotiations, but there's no insider saying jack shit. I spent a shit ton of time on Jakob Chychrun. Let's move on. Kappo Kakko in Seattle. I say a 4-year deal at $5 million, 22 points in 32 games for the Seattle Kraken. He's looked like the solid second-line two-way guy that we thought that he was capable of like a couple years ago when he had his first like half a point per game season in New York. Not obviously when he was drafted, he was expected to be a star. But yeah, looking like he can be a very solid second-liner. If you're Kappo Kakko, you definitely like, if this gets offered to you tomorrow, I think you take that $20 million over the next 4 years, and then you can hit the unrestricted free agency market at 28 years old. For Seattle, this would be, if he continues to develop, this would be a steal in 2 years' time if he's a 60-point great two-way guy. And yeah, I think this would be good for both parties. Don't give him some kind of 8-year deal at $6.5 million and assume off a 32-game sample size that he's going to be a very, very good top sixer. But I think at this point, worst case scenario, Kappo Kakko's a good third liner, $5 million, perfectly fine. Get it done. Shake a hand. Brad Marchand up next. 3 years, $7.25 million. The Bruins weren't willing to pay this. I think someone on the open market will be willing and happily willing to pay Brad Marchand to bring in that leadership veteran experience. And although I've been on the train that he has been regressing in pretty like linear regression when looking at his points per game per year, still a very good top sixer. And I think as long as the body can hold up in terms of injuries, he'll be an effective player. Maybe a young rebuilding team wants to bring in Brad Marchand to kind of mentor their guys, to give them that nasty edge. But I think he's going to get the 3 to 4 year deal at around $7 million that the Bruins weren't willing to give him. Noah Dobson, I'm going to go 3 years, $6.25 million. I think the Islanders should bridge him at this point, man, considering he went from 70 points to just 27 and 52. The team arguably looked better, well, definitely looked better in terms of record-wise without him in the lineup. He's still a very talented offensive defenseman, but he just has so many things to clean up and so many dumb mistakes and just being soft in front of the net where you can't give him some kind of 8-year deal. So 3 years, $6.25 million. Still a good top pair offensive defenseman or elite second pair offensive defenseman. But yeah, he's lost himself a lot of money this summer. Matt Duchene. I have no clue about Matt Duchene. He'll probably sign another 1-year deal at $3 million because that's what he did last year. After putting up 65 points in 82 games, he has 66 points in 64 games. I think if he stays in Dallas, he'll sign some dirt cheap 3-year deal at $4.5 million. That would be a steal if he leaves. 3 years, 6.5. I don't think anybody would give him some kind of big long-term deal considering it blew up in Nashville's face, playing far better, obviously, than he did in Nashville, but he's 34 years old. If I'm Dallas, I'm giving him a little bit more term, 2-3 years, and rightfully so if I'm Duchene. If I really wanted to cash out, I could go to some dog shit team for 4 to 5 years. But I think Duchene wants to win at this point, and I think he'll probably stay on Dallas for a relatively team-friendly deal. And then lastly, we got Luke Hughes, 3 years, $5 million, 29 points in 56 games, playing around 21 minutes a night, has been very solid both ways of the ice. But if I'm New Jersey, I'm not quite certain. I want to give him some long-term deal. And if I'm Luke Hughes, the long-term deal that they're probably offering right now is like 8 years, $6.5 million most likely. So kind of just bet on yourself, sign a 2 to 3 year deal at around $5 million. As Dougie Hamilton continues to regress like he has, your offensive role is going to increase. Don't be like your brother, although Jack Hughes obviously was more proven and signed that 8x8, and then 4 months later you could have gotten 8x10.5 or something like that. Take the bridge in this scenario, considering your play this year has been okay, but nothing warranting some kind of super deal. That's my predictions. Let me know in the comments. What do you think about these different contract predictions? Let me know if there's any guys that I missed. Drop those down below, and I'll give you a quick prediction on that, a little explainer. It's going to be wild. I hope we get some guys that actually hit unrestricted free agency like Boeser, Chychrun, Bennett, Ekblad. I don't want all these wash bums, and then my New York Islanders with the money that they were going to re-sign Brock Nelson with, give it out to some bum. But I'll be seeing you in the next one. Peace.